At my wife's promotion party, she thought it would be funny to introduce me like this. This is my ex-husband. No degree, no future, just freeloads off my money. Everyone, including her parents, laughed. I didn't flinch. I just smiled, lifted my glass, and said, "Cheers. This is the last time any of you will see me." Then I walked out. The room went completely silent. Look, I've photographed a lot of things in my career that didn't want to cooperate. Stubborn bagels that refused to look buttery. Jewelry that somehow looked cheaper under professional lighting. One time, a whole rotisserie chicken that seemed personally offended by my existence. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the look on my wife's face when she decided to roast me harder than that chicken at her fancy law firm party. My name is Mark Rivera, and I make inanimate objects look like they deserve their own Instagram verification check mark. I'm a self-taught product photographer, which means I spent years figuring out that the secret to a good shot isn't just the camera. It's understanding that even a sad-looking sandwich has an angle where it looks like it went to college and has a retirement plan. I can make a tube of toothpaste look like it's about to drop the hottest album of the summer. I've turned discount store candles into luxury lifestyle props. My portfolio has made grown marketing directors cry tears of joy. But apparently none of that matters when you're standing in a room full of lawyers who think creative is a polite word for unemployable. The venue was one of those places that makes you feel poor just by breathing the air. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than my car. Appetizers so small you needed a magnifying glass and a prayer and enough black tie penguin suits to staff an upscale aquarium. My wife, sorry ex-wife now, though at that moment I was still blissfully unaware of the technicality. Bianca Morales had just made partner at Whitmore & Associates, which is apparently a very big deal in the world of people who argue for a living and win. I was proud of her genuinely. I'd been the one suggesting she negotiate harder. The one staying up late when she practiced her presentations. The one who ordered Thai food at midnight when she was buried in case files. I thought we were a team. You know, the kind where one person brings home the briefcase and the other one makes sure the house doesn't look like a crime scene and occasionally remembers to water the plants. So, when she took the microphone during the toasts, I smiled. I figured she'd thank the firm, maybe throw in some humble thing about hard work and dedication, perhaps even mention how I supported her through the brutal partner track. Sweet, quick, done. We'd eat those ridiculous tiny foods. I'd make small talk with people named Bradford and Chick, and we'd go home. Instead, Bianca cleared her throat, looked directly at me with this smile that didn't reach her eyes, and said into that microphone with the confidence of someone who'd clearly rehearsed this. And I want to introduce you all to my ex-husband, Mark Rivera. No degree, no real career trajectory, just someone who's been freeloading off my income while taking pictures of sandwiches. The room did that thing where it inhales collectively like everyone just witnessed a car accident in slow motion. Ex-husband, she said. Ex-husband. News to me, but okay. I'm a quick learner. Her parents, Gerald and Patricia Morales, who'd spent the last 3 years treating me like I was a phase Bianca would eventually grow out of, like a questionable haircut or experimental vegetarian phase, laughed, not polite chuckles. Full-on knee slapping. Isn't he just the funniest little charity case kind of laughter? Gerald actually wiped his eyes like I was the opening act for a Netflix comedy special he'd paid premium prices for. Around the room, people weren't sure whether to laugh along or check their phones and pretend they'd missed it. A few lawyers chuckled nervously. One woman near the shrimp tower looked genuinely uncomfortable, which I appreciated. At least someone in this room had functional empathy. My brain did this interesting thing where time slowed down and sped up simultaneously. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I could feel every eyeball in that ballroom laser focused on me, waiting to see if I'd crumble, cry, or cause a scene. I could smell the overpriced cologne of the guy standing next to me, who definitely leaned in closer to get a better view of my humiliation. Here's the thing about being publicly humiliated. You have options. You can shrink. You can explode. You can do that nervous laugh thing where you pretend it's all a joke and you're totally in on it, even though your soul is actively leaving your body. Or, and this is the path I chose. You can do absolutely nothing they expect. I didn't blink, didn't stutter, didn't look away. I reached for my champagne glass, which for the record, I'd been holding on to mostly because it gave my hands something to do besides awkwardly dangle, and I raised it high. The movement was slow enough that people noticed. The room got quieter, if that was even possible. Cheers, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, but calm enough that I sounded almost bored. This is the last time any of you will see me. Then I took a sip, a good one, because that champagne probably cost more than my monthly insurance, and I wasn't about to waste it. Set the glass down on the nearest table with a gentle clink and walked straight toward the exit. No running, no storming out like a reality TV villain. Just a steady, purposeful walk that said, I'm not fleeing. I'm choosing to leave this energy behind. The room went so quiet you could have heard a contract drop. Someone's phone buzzed and it sounded like a foghorn. I heard Gerald start to say something, probably some condescending attempt to laugh it off, but I was already pushing through the heavy ballroom doors. The hotel corridor was blessedly empty and significantly less humiliating. My hands were shaking slightly, that post-adrenaline tremor that happens when your body realizes it just survived something. I pulled out my phone and ordered a ride. 3 minutes away. Perfect. While I waited, standing under one of those unnecessarily ornate hotel sconces, I opened my notes app and started typing. Because if there's one thing product photography teaches you, it's that presentation matters. And if I was going to blow up my entire life, I was going to do it with a checklist. Don't text back. Not tonight. Not when angry. Not when they inevitably try to gaslight me into thinking I overreacted. Act fast. Like really fast. Essentials only. Leave the relationship baggage behind both literally and metaphorically. Never eat appetizers that look like punctuation marks again. Seriously, if I can't identify it without a menu, I don't trust it. My ride pulled up, a blessed Toyota Camry driven by a guy named Hassan, who didn't ask me any questions about why I was leaving a black tie event early, which made him my favorite person in the entire city. As we pulled away from the hotel, I caught a glimpse of myself in the car window, still in my suit, still technically invited to that party. But somehow, for the first time in 3 years, I looked like myself again. Not the discount version of Mark that Bianca had been trying to renovate into something more palatable to her firm and her family. Just Mark. The guy who could make a sandwich look like a supermodel. The guy who was apparently already divorced and just finding out about it via public announcement. The guy who was about to build something nobody could take credit for but him. The apartment was exactly how I'd left it 3 hours earlier. Mildly chaotic, smelling faintly of coffee and cat food, and blissfully unaware that its primary resident had just been publicly dumped at a party he didn't even want to attend. I stood in the doorway for a second, keys still in hand, and just breathed. This place was mine. Well, technically it was a rental and technically Bianca had her name on the lease, too. But in every way that mattered. The photography equipment scattered across the dining table I never used for dining. The lighting rig in the corner. The collection of weird props I'd accumulated for shoots. This was my space. Pickles, my cat, and the only roommate who'd never once criticized my life choices, lifted his orange tabby head from the couch and gave me the look. You know the one, that specific feline expression that says, "Oh, you're back already. I thought you'd be gone longer. I had plans." His green eyes blinked slowly, which in cat language either means, "I love you," or, "I'm calculating how long until you feed me again." With Pickles, it was always 50-50. "Yeah, buddy," I said, dropping my keys into the bowl by the door. A ceramic thing I'd photographed for a local potter last year, and she'd insisted I keep. Change of plans. We're moving out. Pickles yawned, showing me all his teeth and exactly zero concern about my life imploding. I didn't waste time. I'd learned from years of last-minute client requests that when you need to move fast, you move with purpose. I grabbed the 2 large equipment cases from the hall closet and started with what mattered, my camera bodies. First, the Canon 5D Mark IV that had paid for itself 3 times over. The backup Sony that I bought used and nursed back to professional health. Both got wrapped in the foam inserts like they were made of crystallized dreams and insurance claims. Lindsay is next. The 50mm f/1.4 that made everything look like a movie scene. The 100mm macro that could make a strawberry seed look like landscape photography. The 24 to 70mm workhorse that had shot everything from engagement rings to craft beer labels. Each one got its cap, its case, its designated spot in the foam. I moved like I was performing surgery because in a way I was. This was my livelihood. I was packing and nobody, not Bianca, not her parents, not the entire law firm of people who thought freelance meant unemployed with extra steps was going to make me leave it behind. Hard drives went into a separate padded case for terabytes of client work, backups, raw files, and that one folder of experimental shots. I'd been meaning to do something with my entire portfolio, essentially my proof that I wasn't just some guy with a camera and delusions of adequacy. Clothes were easier. I grabbed 2 pairs of jeans that still fit and didn't have mystery stains. 3 black t-shirts because I'd learned that wearing all black makes you look either artistic or like you work at a trendy coffee shop, and both were acceptable in my line of work. 1 button down for client meetings. Underwear and socks, because I'm chaotic, but not feral. My good jacket, the charcoal one that made me look like I had my life together, even when I absolutely didn't. Toiletries went into a grocery bag. Toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant, the face wash that kept me from looking like a haunted Victorian orphan. The basics. I pulled out my laptop, a MacBook Pro that had cost me 3 months of grinding product shoots, but was worth every penny, and started handling logistics. First, accommodations. I pulled up booking sites and filtered for pet-friendly because Pickles and I were a package deal. Found a decent extended stay hotel about 15 minutes away. 2 weeks affordable enough that it wouldn't murder my savings. Decent reviews that mentioned clean and quiet and didn't find any horror movie scenarios. Booked it. Confirmation email arrived. Forward to myself 3 times because paranoia is just preparedness with anxiety. Next clients. I had 4 active projects with deadlines coming up, and the last thing I needed was to tank my professional reputation because my personal life had decided to speedrun a disaster movie. I opened my email and started typing. Subject, brief schedule adjustment. Hi, client name. Hope you're well. Family emergency requires my immediate attention for the next few days. Please don't worry. Your project is on track and deadlines are secure. I have everything backed up and will continue working remotely. We'll check in by end of week with updates. Thank you for your patience, Mark. Professional, vague enough that nobody would ask follow-up questions. True enough that I didn't feel like a complete liar. I copied, pasted, personalized each one, and hit send 4 times. The whoosh sound felt like progress. Then I pulled up my messages and scrolled to Rafi Khan, my best friend since community college and the only person I trusted to handle this information without turning it into a therapy session. I hadn't asked for me. Bianca roasted me at her party, called me her ex-husband in front of everyone. News to me, I left. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Rafi was always on his phone, usually doom scrolling between his shifts as an ER nurse, which meant he'd seen everything, and was subsequently unimpressed by most human drama. Rafi, want me to bring marshmallows? Because that's a fire. I actually laughed out loud, which startled Pickles enough that he relocated to the top of the bookshelf to judge me from a higher elevation. Me, moving out tonight. Hotel for now. I'll keep you posted. Rafi, need help? I'm off at 11 o'clock. Me. I'm good. Just need to disappear for a bit. Rafi, ghosting, but make it healthy. Proud of you. Call if you need bail money or emotional support or both. I love that, man. I turned off my phone. Well, not off. I wasn't a psychopath, but I enabled Do Not Disturb, silenced everything except actual phone calls, and buried it in my jacket pocket. The world could wait. Bianca could wait. Her inevitable texts, ranging from defensive to condescending, could definitely wait. On my laptop, I created a new folder on my desktop and labeled it Operation New Life. Because if you're going to burn your old existence down, you might as well give the Phoenix moment a dramatic title. Inside, I started subfolder Apartment Hunt, Client Leads, Financial Reset, New Website Copy. It felt good, organized, like I was building something instead of just running away. By midnight, I had everything loaded into my car. A 2015 Honda Civic that had seen better days, but still had functional cup holders and a working aux cord, which was all I really needed. Pickles went into his carrier with minimal protest, and only one attempted escape. I did one final walkthrough of the apartment, turning off lights, checking that I hadn't left anything crucial behind. The hotel room was exactly what I expected, clean, generic, and blessedly mine. I set up a mini studio by the window where the natural light would hit in the morning. Tripod in the corner, reflector leaning against the desk, camera bag within arm's reach. The room looked less like a temporary crash pad and more like a functional workspace. Within 20 minutes, Pickles, released from his carrier, immediately claimed the desk as his throne, then repositioned himself directly on top of my laptop keyboard like a soft purring paperweight with opinions. Really? I asked him. He purred louder, which I took as a yes. I didn't fight it. Instead, I grabbed my notebook, sat on the aggressively beige hotel bed, and started planning. Not for tomorrow, for everything after. The text started rolling in around 7 in the morning, which was honestly impressive considering most of Bianca's lawyer friends treated any hour before 9 as a war crime. I've been awake since 6 o'clock. Hotel coffee tastes like regret and bad decisions, but it's caffeinated regret, so you drink it anyway. Editing photos from a client shoot when my silenced phone started lighting up like a Christmas tree having an electrical emergency. I should have left it alone. Should have stayed focused on making this boutique's hand-poured candles look like they contain the meaning of life. But curiosity is a disease and I was apparently patient zero. First wave Bianca herself. The messages came in stages like she was working through the 5 stages of grief but making it everyone else's problem. Bianca, that was dramatic. Bianca, you really just left. Seriously, Bianca, people are asking questions, Mark. Then after a 20-minute gap where she presumably realized that you embarrassed me by leaving after I publicly humiliated you wasn't the winning argument she thought it was. Bianca, look, it was a joke. Everyone knew it was a joke. You're being too sensitive. And finally, my personal favorite, the one that made me actually laugh out loud and disturb Pickles from his morning window watching routine. Bianca, we should talk about this like adults. I think we can work through this if you just communicate better. I stared at that last message for a solid 30 seconds. The audacity, the sheer unfiltered audacity of calling me her ex-husband in front of a ballroom full of people and then suggesting I was the one with communication issues was so cosmically absurd that I almost had to respect it. Almost. I didn't respond. That was rule number 1 on my list, and I was sticking to it like my camera strapped to my neck. But Bianca was just the opening act. Her mother, Patricia Morales, a woman who'd once told me that photography isn't a real profession. It's a hobby people pay you for sometimes, sent me a text that was basically an essay with punctuation that looked like it had been through law school. Patricia, Mark, I hope you understand that Bianca's comment last night was meant in good humor. We're all adults here, and sometimes humor among successful people can seem harsh to those who aren't used to that environment. I think you overreacted by leaving so abruptly. It reflected poorly on Bianca during her important moment. Perhaps you could reach out to her and apologize for the disruption. Family means supporting each other through big moments, even when jokes don't land the way we intend. Let's move past this. Patricia, I read it twice, then a third time just to make sure I hadn't hallucinated the part where she suggested I apologize for being publicly humiliated at an event I didn't want to attend in the first place. Family means supporting each other, I said aloud to Pickles, who'd relocated to the bed and was needing the comforter like it owed him money. That's rich coming from people who treated me like I was a stain on their daughter's LinkedIn profile. Pickles meowed, which I chose to interpret as agreement. But wait, there's more. Because Gerald Morales, Bianca's father, a man who spoke exclusively in business metaphors and thought emotions were what weak people used instead of strategic planning, didn't text. No, Gerald sent an email, a formal email with an attachment. Subject, Financial Clarity your relationship with Bianca. Mark, I believe in transparency and data-driven decisions. Attached, you'll find a spreadsheet detailing the approximate financial support Bianca has provided during your marriage. I've titled it Where Mark Benefited from Us, as I believe it's important you understand the full scope of investment the Morales family has made in your lifestyle. This isn't meant to be hostile, simply factual. Numbers don't lie. I hope this provides context for last night's comments. Best Gerald, I opened the attachment. It was an actual Excel spreadsheet color-coded with formulas. Categories included rent differential. Apparently, I should have been paying more. Networking events attended. Each one assigned a dollar value for the appetizers I'd eaten, career advice value, which was listed as $5,000. And I genuinely wanted to know how he'd calculated that. And my personal favorite, Wi-Fi troubleshooting February 2023, listed as $150. I'd fixed his Wi-Fi by literally unplugging the router and plugging it back in. A thing he could have Googled, and he'd assigned it a monetary value like I performed surgery. This family, I muttered, closing the laptop before I said something to it that the hotel's FBI agent assigned to my webcam would have to report. This whole family is unhinged. The only message that felt remotely human came later that afternoon, and it was from someone I barely knew. Sloan Park, one of Bianca's colleagues at the firm. I'd met her maybe 3 times. Always at firm events, always briefly, always while she looked like she'd rather be literally anywhere else. She was one of those people who seemed competent and exhausted in equal measure. Like she was really good at her job, but the job was slowly draining her life force. Sloan. Hey Mark, that was brutal last night. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. If you need a referral, I know a sustainable fashion brand that needs product photography. They're looking for someone who can make eco-friendly clothing look high-end without the greenwashing vibe. Thought of your portfolio? Let me know. I stared at the message like it was written in a foreign language. Someone from Bianca's world being kind, offering help without a lecture attached, not suggesting I brought this on myself. Me, I work for money and snacks. Her response came back in less than a minute. Sloan, we pay in both. Also, their snacks are legitimately good. Like fancy granola that doesn't taste like punishment. I actually smiled. First genuine smile since the party. Me. Send me the contact info. Thanks, Sloan. Sloan done. Also, for what it's worth, half the room thought what you did was the classiest exit they'd ever seen. The other half are lawyers and don't understand human emotion, so don't worry about them. I wanted to ask why she was being nice, what her angle was. If this was some elaborate firm strategy to make me look unstable, but maybe, and this was a wild concept, maybe she was just a decent person trapped in a job full of people who'd weaponized their professionalism. By evening, I'd made a decision. I needed professional help and not the kind that came with a spreadsheet attached. I searched therapists near me and filtered by accepts my insurance and doesn't look like they'll judge me for talking about my feelings. Dr. Nor Alvarez had a profile that said she specialized in life transitions, self-worth, and recovering from toxic relationships. Her photo showed someone in her 40s with kind eyes and the kind of smile that suggested she'd heard worse stories than mine and had opinions about them. I booked a virtual session for the next day. Cost me a co-a and whatever remained of my pride, which at this point was like $3 and some pocket lent. The session happened in my hotel room with Pickles occasionally photobombing the webcam. Dr. Alvarez didn't seem bothered by the cat or the fact that I was clearly calling from a hotel or that I spent the first 5 minutes just explaining the spreadsheet situation because it felt important that someone outside my head confirmed it was insane. "Your calm exit was healthy," she said after I'd finished the whole story. She had this way of nodding that made you feel like your feelings weren't stupid. "You set a boundary in real time. That's actually really difficult to do." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. "I call it the silent mic drop," she smiled. That's exactly what it was. Now, let's talk about what comes next because leaving the room was step 1. Not going back is step 2, and that's usually harder. We talked for 50 minutes. She taught me phrases like "that doesn't serve me" and "I'm not available for that kind of interaction," and my personal favorite, "I'm going to sit with that before responding," which was therapists speak for "I need time to figure out if you're being reasonable or if you've lost your mind." When the session ended, I felt lighter, not fixed. I wasn't naive enough to think one therapy session solved anything, but lighter, like someone had confirmed that I wasn't overreacting, wasn't being too sensitive. Wasn't the problem. I looked at Pickles, who'd claimed my pillow as his personal throne. "We're going to be okay," I told him. He slowly blinked at me, which in cat language is basically a hug. I take it. Picking a new city is kind of like online dating, except instead of swiping right on someone who probably lied about their height, you're committing to a zip code that could either change your life or make you regret every decision that led you there. I needed somewhere that wasn't here. Here being the city where Bianca's face was probably on a billboard somewhere advertising legal excellence and emotional unavailability. I made a list because I'm that person now apparently. The person who makes lists. The person who color codes things. The person who's one bad day away from buying a label maker and going absolutely feral with it. My requirements were simple. Decent natural life for photography because I wasn't about to compromise my work quality for geography. Affordable rent because my bank account wasn't exactly doing backflips. A creative community that wouldn't ask me why I didn't go to art school. And this one was non-negotiable. Good bagels. You can tell everything you need to know about a city by its bagels. If they're serving you bread with a hole in it and calling it a bagel, that's a red flag bigger than the one I missed in my marriage. I shortlisted 5 cities, eliminated 2 immediately because their Craigslist apartment listings looked like they were written by people who thought cozy mint you can touch all 4 walls without moving in character meant the building has ghosts and a lawsuit pending. That left me with 3. Pittsburgh because it was reinventing itself and had that scrappy underdog energy I related to. Richmond because the food scene was apparently incredible and the rent wouldn't require me to sell organs, and Philadelphia because it was cheaper than New York, grittier than Boston, and had that perfect combination of history, and we've seen some stuff that felt honest. I picked Philadelphia, not because of some grand epiphany or because I threw a dart at a map, though that would have been more dramatic, but because I looked at the light. I spent 2 hours researching photography studios, looking at Instagram posts tagged with Philly locations, studying how the sun hit the buildings in different neighborhoods. The light was good. Golden hour looked like it actually meant something there. The architecture had texture, brick and warehouse windows, and those row homes that looked like they'd been having the same conversation with each other for 100 years. Also, the bagels passed the test. I'd done my research. This was a bagel-respecting city. I found a loft in an old converted textile factory in Fishtown. The listing showed exposed brick, tall windows that were basically photographer catnip, hardwood floors that had more character than most people I'd met at Bianca's firm events, and enough square footage that I could set up a proper studio space without my light stands living in the bathroom. The rent was reasonable, or as reasonable as anything gets when you're starting over and your ex-wife's father has apparently been tracking your financial dependence in an Excel file. I video toured with the landlord, a guy named Marcus, who wore a Flyers jersey and didn't ask me a single question about my credit score or why I was moving from out of state. He asked if I was cool with noise because there were other artists in the building. And when I said I was literally moving there to be around creative people who weren't lawyers, He laughed and said, "You're going to fit right in, man." I signed the lease digitally, transferred the deposit, and suddenly I had an address that Bianca had never been to. That felt more powerful than it probably should have. Moving day was a blur of U-Haul panic in the discovery that I owned more camera equipment than furniture, which felt about right for my life. The loft was everything the photos promised and somehow better. Those windows, man, those windows were going to make my product shots look like they belonged in magazines that people actually paid for. My neighbors introduced themselves within the first hour, which was either very friendly or very nosy, and I was choosing to believe it was the former because I needed wins. Juniper lived across the hall. A furniture maker who apparently specialized in pieces that looked like nature decided to collaborate with geometry. She showed up with homemade cookies that were still warm and tasted like someone actually cared about butter ratios, which immediately made her my favorite person in Pennsylvania. "Welcome to the weird building," she said, leaning against my door frame while I tried to figure out where my coffee maker had ended up in the moving chaos. She was maybe 30 with paint-stained overalls and the kind of competent energy that suggested she could build you a table and also probably fix your car. "We're all creatives here, so it gets loud sometimes, but it's good loud. Like people making things loud, not people screaming about their parking spots. Loud. Good loud I can handle," I said, finally locating the coffee maker under a box labeled kitchen stuff. Maybe screaming I left behind in my previous life. She grinned like she knew there was a story there, but was polite enough not to ask. "There's a poet upstairs named Theo. He practices slam poetry at weird hours, but he's good, so it's worth it. And downstairs is a small ad agency that smells like expensive coffee and desperation. They're nice, though. Sometimes they need product shots." My ears perked up like pickles when he heard the can opener. "Product photography is literally what I do." "Oh, you're going to do great here," Juniper said. "Also, there's a taco truck on the corner every Tuesday and Thursday. Cash only. Life-changing El Pastor. Don't skip it." Theo, the poet from upstairs, knocked on my door later that evening while I was assembling my light rig. He was tall, skinny in a way that suggested he forgot to eat when he was working and had the kind of intensity that probably made people either really trust him or cross the street. "Heard we got a photographer," he said like it was the most interesting news he'd gotten all month. "I'm Theo. I perform sometimes at the coffee shop 2 blocks down. You should come. Also, if you ever need someone to model for moody portraits where they look like they're contemplating existence, I'm very good at looking contemplative." I laughed. "I'll keep that in mind." "Cool. Also, welcome to the building. We're all broke creatives trying to make rent and art simultaneously, so you're among your people." He said it like it was a badge of honor, and honestly, it kind of was. The downstairs ed studio, operation called Bright House Creative, sent someone up the next day. A woman named Asha, who had the kind of energy that suggested she ran on cold brew and unrealistic client deadlines. Juniper said, "You're a product photographer?" she asked. "Straight to business. We outsource that work constantly. If you're good and you're fast and you don't ghost us when things get chaotic, we'll send work your way." "I'm all 3 of those things," I said, which was maybe overconfident, but felt true. "Great. Send me your portfolio and your rates. Real rates. Not the I'm desperate, so I'll work for exposure rates. We pay actual money." I could have kissed her. That night, I sat on my floor, in my loft, in my new city, surrounded by boxes and possibility. I opened new bank accounts because starting fresh meant actually starting fresh. Changed my business address to the Philadelphia Loft. Updated my website header to say Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, like I'd been here forever. I unsubscribed from Bianca's firm newsletter, which had been arriving weekly with subject lines like Whitmore and Associates, leading the way in corporate law and partner spotlight. Meet our team. Every email felt like a reminder that I was supposed to be impressed, supposed to feel lucky I'd been adjacent to all that success. I didn't need the reminders anymore. On a sticky note, because apparently I was full-on committed to the sticky note life now. I wrote 3 rules. No begging, no bragging, just building. I stuck it on my bathroom mirror where I'd see it every morning. Simple, clear, the kind of manifesto that didn't require a TED Talk or a motivational poster with an eagle on it. Pickles, who'd been exploring his new kingdom, jumped onto the windowsill and stared out at Philadelphia like he was a tiny orange mobster surveying his territory. "We made it, buddy," I said. He meowed once, which I chose to interpret as approval. Outside, the city hummed with that specific city sound, distant traffic, someone's music, life happening in layers. It wasn't quiet. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Starting over professionally is weird because you're the same person with the same skills, but somehow you have to convince yourself and everyone else that you're not just running away from a dumpster fire. You're running towards something better. The difference is subtle but important, like the difference between rustic and looks like it was photographed in a barn when you're shooting product campaigns. I spent my first full week in Philadelphia rebuilding my brand from the ground up, which sounds dramatic, but really just meant I locked myself in the loft with Pickles as my only colleague and enough coffee to fuel a small country. My old website had been fine, professional, clean portfolio that showed I knew which end of the camera to point at things, but it felt like it had Bianca's fingerprints all over it. She'd helped me with the copy, which meant she'd edited all my personality out of it and replaced it with phrases like leveraging visual storytelling to drive brand engagement. Nobody talks like that. Nobody thinks like that. And if they do, I don't want to photograph their products. Rivera Studio, that's what I called it. Simple, clean, my last name. Like a signature on work I was proud of. The website got a complete overhaul. Straightforward packages with actual numbers on them instead of contact for pricing, which is just code for I'll make up a number based on how much I think you can pay. 3 tiers, essential, professional, premium. Each one clearly outlining what you got, how many images, how many rounds of revisions, turnaround time, everything. No hidden fees, no. Oh, by the way, charges that show up later like uninvited relatives at Thanksgiving. And here's the thing that felt revolutionary. I stopped discounting my work. Just stopped cold turkey. No more friends and family pricing or since we go way back or I'll give you a deal this time. You know what I realized? If someone's really your friend, they want to support you at full price. They want you to succeed. They're not trying to nickel and dime you like you're a clearance rack at a department store going out of business. If you want free work, I decided you can be a sandwich model. I'll photograph you between 2 pieces of bread and we'll call it art. Otherwise, pay the rate. I joined every local creative meetup I could find on meetup.com, which is either a great networking strategy or a sign that I was desperately lonely and trying to make friends like a kid at a new school. Probably both. Definitely both. The first one was at a coffee shop called Ultimo Coffee, which had the kind of aesthetic that made you want to buy a typewriter and pretend you were working on a novel, even though you were really just checking Instagram. The meetup was called Philly Freelance Collective, and the description said, casual hangout for independent creatives who are tired of working alone and talking to their pets. I felt personally attacked and immediately RSVP'd. Yes. Showed up with my portfolio printed out, not on fancy cardboard like I was interviewing for a corporate job, just clean prints in a simple binder that said, I care about my work, but I'm not trying to intimidate you with production value. About 15 people were there sitting around mismatched tables with laptops and sketchbooks and that specific kind of coffee shop energy that's half productivity and half procrastination. I introduced myself. Hey, I'm Mark. I'm a product photographer. I make inanimate objects look like they have thoughts and feelings. Recently moved here from a city where people thought photography was a hobby I did between being unemployed. People laughed with me, not at me. That was new. That was really new. A woman named Casey who did brand strategies said, "Oh, thank God. Someone who actually admits this stuff is hard. I'm so tired of people pretending freelancing is all freedom and sleeping in. Like, yeah, I can work in my pajamas, but I'm also constantly one missed invoice away from a panic attack." Everyone nodded like she'd just recited scripture. I showed them my sample shots. A coffee bag that looked like it was about to drop a philosophy podcast. A handmade soap that had more depth than most of my ex-wife's colleagues, a set of kitchen knives that managed to look dangerous and artistic without being threatening. People actually leaned in, asked questions, real questions like, how do you get that reflection? And what's your lighting setup? Instead of, but what's your real job? A graphic designer named Marcus, different Marcus from my landlord, Philadelphia apparently had a Marcus quota, said he had a client who needed product shots for a rebrand. Could he refer me? Absolutely, I said. Trying to sound casual like this wasn't the first organic referral I'd gotten in months that didn't come with a lecture about sustainability or a spreadsheet about my inadequacies. I started going every week. Brought different samples each time. Started actually making friends. People who understood that I can't. I have a deadline wasn't an excuse. It was a legitimate life condition. People who got that creative work wasn't less real just because you didn't do it in an office with fluorescent lights slowly draining your soul. The gigs started coming in slowly at first then faster. A cafe that wanted their pastries photographed like they were auditioning for a cooking show. An indie fashion label that needed lookbook shots but couldn't afford a huge production. So, I made it work with natural light and a brick wall and models who were really just the designer's friends, but photographed like they'd walked runways in Paris. My favorite was a candle company run by two women named Bix and Jordan who'd started making candles in their kitchen and somehow turned it into an actual business. They wanted flames that feel like Sunday morning, their exact words. And I love that. Not make it look expensive or make it look premium. Just make it feel like something, like a mood, like a moment you wanted to live in. I shot those candles at golden hour with backlighting that made the flames look like tiny campfires you could hold in your hand. They cried when they saw the proofs. Actual tears. Then they paid me on time and referred me to 3 other small businesses. This, I thought, is what it's supposed to feel like. Therapy with Dr. Noor became a weekly thing. We'd video chat. Her in her office with bookshelves that looked like they contained the answers to life. Me in my loft with Pickles occasionally walking across my keyboard like he was adding his own clinical notes. She taught me phrases that felt like cheat codes for adulthood. That doesn't work for me. 5 words, simple, not aggressive, not apologetic, just factual. I started using it everywhere. Client wanted rush delivery without rush fees. That doesn't work for me, but here are my rush options. Family friend wanted free headshot because it'll only take a minute. That doesn't work for me, but I'd love to send you my pricing. It was like I discovered a superpower I didn't know existed. I need to sit with that before responding. This one saved me from approximately 17 terrible decisions in the span of a month. Someone would ask something via email, usually something that felt urgent but really wasn't. And instead of immediately saying yes because I was afraid they'd find someone else, I'd say I needed time to consider it. 90% of the time, sitting with it revealed that it was either a terrible deal, a scope creep nightmare waiting to happen, or something I just didn't want to do. Dr. No also taught me about the difference between being agreeable and being a doormat, which honestly should be taught in schools right after algebra and before whatever the mitochondria is. You can be kind and have boundaries, she said during one session. Those things aren't opposites. Actually, the kindest thing you can do for yourself and others is be clear about what you're available for. I wrote that down, stuck it on another sticky note. My bathroom mirror was becoming a manifesto at this point. I even used "that doesn't work for me" on pizza toppings one night when Theo invited me to join him and Juniper for pizza and beer. They were debating pineapple on pizza, a debate that has probably ended friendships and possibly small governments. I respect pineapple, I said, holding my beer like I was about to make a presidential address. I just can't participate in that particular culinary choice right now. That doesn't work for me. They both cracked up, Juniper said. Did you just therapy speak your way out of having an opinion on pizza? I therapy spoke my way into having boundaries about pizza. I corrected. It's called growth. We ended up getting half pineapple, half pepperoni, and I felt like I'd just successfully navigated a diplomatic crisis. Later that night, back in my loft with Pickles purring on my chest like a warm, judgmental heating pad, I thought about how different everything felt. Not perfect. I still woke up some mornings with that weird anxiety that felt like I'd forgotten something important, but different, better. I wasn't begging for scraps anymore. Wasn't apologizing for existing, wasn't discounting myself into irrelevance. I was just building one shot, one boundary, one that doesn't work for me at a time. And honestly, it was working. 3 weeks into my Philadelphia Renaissance, which is what I was calling it because running away and pretending everything is fine, didn't have the same ring to it. My phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I let those go to voicemail because 90% of unknown calls are either spam, someone trying to sell me an extended car warranty for a car I don't own, or worse, a former client who thinks, "Can you make one tiny change?" Means they don't have to pay the revision fee. But something made me answer. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe Pickles had been staring at me with those judgmental green eyes for so long that I needed to interact with another human voice before I started narrating my life out loud like a documentary. "This is Mark," I said using my professional voice that sits somewhere between, "I have my life together and please hire me. I promise I'm competent. Mr. Rivera, this is Lionel Beaumont." The voice was older, distinguished in that way that suggested the person probably owned multiple homes and had strong opinions about scotch. "I'm a founding partner at Whitmore & Associates, retired now, though I still maintain some advisory involvement." My brain did this thing where it short-circuited and rebooted like a computer that just got too many browser tabs open at once. Whitmore & Associates, Bianca's firm, the firm where I'd been publicly roasted like a marshmallow over a bonfire. The firm whose partner events I'd attended while people looked at me like I was the help who'd accidentally wandered into the wrong room. "Oh," I said, which was definitely not my most articulate moment, but was honestly the best my mouth could manage while my brain was still processing the cosmic irony of the situation. "I heard about what happened at the partnership celebration." Mr. Beaumont continued, his tone even and completely unreadable. I also happened to see your portfolio. Sloan Park forwarded it to me when she was looking for photographers for a project she's working on. Your work is exceptional, Mr. Rivera. Really exceptional. I sat down, just straight up sat down on the floor of my loft because my legs suddenly forgot how to hold up a human body. Thank you. I managed professional calm. Not at all like my internal monologue was screaming, "What is happening right now?" in all caps. The firm is undergoing a rebrand, he said, new visual identity, new website, new marketing materials. We're looking for someone to handle the photography, team portraits, office environment, the works. I'd like you to pitch for it. Would you be interested? The irony didn't just taste metallic in my mouth. It tasted like a whole hardware store. It tasted like the universe had looked at my life and said, "You know what would be hilarious?" This was the firm where my ex-wife worked. The firm where her parents probably still told stories about me at dinner parties like I was a cautionary tale about marrying below your tax bracket. The firm that represented everything I'd walked away from. And they wanted me to pitch for their rebrand. My heart was doing burpees. Full-on cardio exercise happening in my chest cavity. But my voice stayed level. I'd be very interested, I said. When would you like to see a pitch? How's next Tuesday? Say 10 o'clock in the morning. We can meet at my home office in Gladwine if you'd prefer to avoid the downtown office. He knew. He absolutely knew that walking into that office would be like voluntarily attending my own roasting sequel edition. And he was giving me an out. I appreciated that more than he could possibly know. Tuesday at 10 works perfectly, I said. I'll prepare a comprehensive pitch deck. Excellent. I'll send you the details via email. Oh, and Mr. Rivera, come prepare to show us what makes you different. We can hire any competent photographer in Philadelphia. I want to know why we should hire you specifically. After we hung up, I sat on my floor for a solid 5 minutes just staring at Pickles, who stared back like I just told him we were moving again and he was not here for it. This is insane, I said out loud. This is absolutely cosmically insane. Pickles yawned. You're right, I said. It's also an opportunity. A huge opportunity with the firm that publicly humiliated me. Nothing about this is weird at all. I stood up, cracked my knuckles like I was about to fight someone instead of make a PowerPoint, and got to work. The pitch deck I built over the next 4 days wasn't just good, it was nuclear. It was everything I'd learned about making inanimate objects look like they had personality applied to humans and office spaces. I created mock-ups showing what their rebrand could look like. Team portraits where people actually looked like humans instead of corporate robots. Office shots that didn't have that fluorescent lit hostage situation vibe that most law firm photography somehow achieved. Brand colors that suggested we're professional and competent without screaming we will bite your head off and then bill you for it. I included samples of my range. Serious when it needed to be serious, warm when it needed to be approachable, dynamic when it needed energy. I wrote copy that was clear and confident without being cocky. I priced it fairly, not cheap because desperate, not expensive because delusional, just right because I knew my worth now. Juniper knocked on my door around hour 15 of this process, took one look at me, surrounded by laptop, coffee cups, and what was definitely too many open browser tabs and said, "You look like you're either planning a heist or having a breakdown." Pitching to my ex-wife's law firm for their rebrand photography, I said without looking up. She blinked. I don't even know what that is. That's either the best revenge or the worst idea. Could be both, I admitted. We'll find out Tuesday. Tuesday arrived like it had been waiting in the wings for its big dramatic entrance. I dressed in my good charcoal blazer, the one that made me look like I had opinions about architecture, paired with dark jeans and boots that said creative professional instead of showed up in sweatpants. Brought printed copies of the pitch deck because some people still appreciated physical materials. Plus my iPad loaded with the full portfolio in case they wanted to dig deeper. Mr. Beaumont's home office was in one of those neighborhoods where the houses looked like they'd been designed by people who thought subtle was for amateurs. But his actual office was surprisingly normal. Big windows, lots of natural light, bookshelves that looked actually used instead of decorative, and coffee that smelled expensive but not pretentious. He was there with 2 other people, Sloan, who gave me an encouraging nod, and another partner named Richard Chun, who handled the firm's marketing, and apparently had final say on creative decisions. I pitched for 45 minutes, showed them the mock-ups, explained my process, walked them through how I'd shoot their space to make it feel both professional and human, addressed the elephant in the room directly. I know my personal history with this firm is complicated. That won't affect my work. If anything, I'm more motivated to deliver something exceptional. Richard Chin smiled. I appreciate the directness. Show us a test series. 5 portraits, 3 office environments. You have 1 week. I shot that test series like my entire career depended on it because honestly, it kind of did. I photographed 3 attorneys, none of them Bianca, thank God, and made them look competent and approachable instead of like they were about to foreclose on someone's dreams. I shot their conference rooms with light that made them feel less dystopian corporate thriller and more place where productive things happen. I delivered it in 6 days. They loved it. The contract came through Friday afternoon. Full rebrand photography package, 6 figures, paid in installments with a kill fee clause that protected me if they backed out. I signed it, returned it, and then just sat there staring at my laptop screen like I just won something I didn't know I was competing for. Then I went online and bought Pickles of premium scratching post, the fancy kind with multiple levels and sile rope that probably cost more than my first camera lens because we were officially a 2 scratching post household now. And that felt like success in a way that was both ridiculous and completely valid. Pickles inspected his new furniture with the seriousness of a home inspector, then immediately claimed the top platform as his new throne. "We did it, buddy," I said. He meowed once, sprawled across his new kingdom, and promptly fell asleep. "Yeah, we definitely did it. The thing about success is that it makes you simultaneously more confident and more paranoid. Like, I just landed a 6-figure contract with a firm that had previously treated me like decorative furniture that occasionally ate the appetizers. And instead of celebrating like a normal person, I spent 3 days convinced they'd realize they'd made a mistake and ask for their money back. Dr. Reneur called this imposture syndrome and said it was normal. I called it my entire personality and she said we should probably talk about that. But the work was real. The checks cleared and suddenly I had this momentum that felt like I was riding a bike downhill and had forgotten where the brakes were. Good scary, not bad scary. The kind of scary that comes with possibilities instead of consequences. I started going to this co-working night at a space called the Foundry. Yes, every creative workspace in Philadelphia is named after some vaguely industrial thing. We get it. We're all very authentic. Where freelancers gathered to work in parallel, like some kind of productivity support group. It was basically we're all avoiding working alone in our apartments where the only feedback we get is from our cats, but with better Wi-Fi and kombucha on tap. That's where I met Kai Morales. I know, Morales. The universe has jokes and apparently it was workshopping a tight 5 about my life. Kai was sitting at a table near the window surrounded by approximately 7,000 sticky notes and a laptop that had more stickers on it than visible surface area. Kai used they/them pronouns which they announced immediately when we started talking and I appreciated the efficiency were muttering at their screen in a way that suggested the website they were building had personally insulted their mother. "Everything okay?" I asked because I'm apparently the kind of person who talks to strangers now. Philadelphia Mark was really different from Old City Mark. Philadelphia Mark had opinions and started conversations. Old City Mark ate small appetizers and smiled politely while people roasted him. Kai looked up with the expression of someone who'd been staring at code for so long they'd forgotten human faces existed. This client's website is held together with duct tape and prayers. I'm basically performing surgery on a patient who's already dead but doesn't know it yet. I laughed. I photograph products for a living. Last week, I spent 2 hours making a hamburger look appetizing while it slowly decomposed under hot lights. I understand fighting losing battles. Product photography. Kai perked up like I just said the magic password. Do you do website visuals? Like custom stuff for brands? That's literally most of my work now. Okay, so here's my situation, Kai said, closing their laptop like we were about to have a serious business conversation, which apparently we were. I build websites for small businesses and startups. I'm really good at the code and the functionality and making things not break. But visuals, I can make something work, but I can't make it look like it belongs in this decade. I keep telling clients they need custom photography, and they keep using stock photos that look like a thumbs up emoji became sentient. Stock photos are the worst. I agreed. Nothing says we gave up like a diverse group of people laughing at a salad in a conference room. Exactly. Kai pointed at me like I just solved world hunger. Okay, pitch. What if we collaborated? I send you my web clients who need visuals. You send me your photography clients who need websites that don't look like they were built in 2003. We split referral fees or do package deals or something. I don't know. We'll figure out the business stuff. But the point is, we both make more money and clients get something that doesn't make them cry. I like Kai immediately. They had that energy that suggested they'd thought this through approximately 12 seconds ago and were already committed to making it happen. I'm in, I said. Let's try it. We shook hands like we were sealing a deal that would either change our careers or become a funny story we told at future co-working nights. Spoiler alert, it was the first one. Our first collaboration was for a small skincare company run by a woman named Priya who'd been using her iPhone and a ring light she'd bought on Amazon. Her products were actually great, handmade, sustainable, all those buzzwords that make people feel good about spending money, but her website looked like a digital cry for help. Kai rebuilt the site with clean layouts and e-commerce functionality that didn't make you want to throw your computer out a window. I shot her products with the kind of lighting that made them look like they belonged in a magazine spread instead of someone's bathroom counter. Priya cried when she saw the final result. Then she told 6 other small business owners about us. Then those people told other people, and suddenly Kai and I had a legitimate thing going. We started meeting weekly at the foundry, coordinating projects, referring clients back and forth like we were running some kind of creative trade route. It was the first time I'd had a real business partner, someone who understood that collaboration meant we both bring something valuable instead of one person does the work and the other person takes credit. My cousin Tori showed up one Thursday, unannounced as always, carrying a duffel bag in the kind of chaotic energy that suggested she'd made several impulsive decisions recently and was about to make several more. Tori had never picked a normal lane in her entire life. She'd been a barista, a yoga instructor, a social media manager for a pet psychic. Yes, really. And was currently between opportunities, which meant she was crashing on my couch for an undefined period. And I wasn't about to say no because family is family. Even when family shows up without calling first, she walked into my loft, looked around at the organized chaos of my studio setup, the prints on the walls, the client mood boards I've been working on, and said, "Your place looks like a movie set where the character finally gets it together." "That's because I finally got it together," I said. "What happened to you?" She threw her bag on my couch, which Pickles immediately investigated like it might contain either food or threats to his territory. "You used to be so apologetic about everything. Now you're like confident and stuff. It's weird. I like it. I left a marriage where I was treated like an expensive mistake and moved to a city where people don't know my backstory." I explained. "Turns out that helps." I stayed for a week, and during that time she inadvertently became my focus group for an idea I'd been rolling around in my head, teaching other creatives how to not get screwed over by their own lack of boundaries. "You should teach this stuff," Tori said one night while we were eating takeout Thai food and I was explaining how I'd learned to write contracts that protected me. "Like seriously, you went from being the person who worked for exposure to the person who has a 6-figure or contract. That's a documentary series or a workshop," I said slowly, the idea crystallizing like I just discovered gravity. I launched it 3 weeks later. A weekend workshop called the Scrappy Creator's Survival Guide. 2 days, 8 hours total, covering everything I wish someone had taught me before I spent years undercharging and over-delivering. Pricing that reflected your actual value. Contracts that protected you from scope creep. Lighting hacks using $10 reflectors from the hardware store instead of $500 modifiers, and my personal favorite module, how to decline politely without catching fire. I kept it at 20 people and it sold out in 4 days. The attendees were exactly who I'd hoped for. Photographers, designers, illustrators, writers, all people who were good at their craft and terrible at the business side. All people who had been told that passion should be payment enough. All people who needed permission to charge what they were worth. We met at the foundry, which gave me a discount on the space because apparently teaching other creatives not to get exploited was on brand for them. I taught them how to calculate their actual costs, not just equipment and software, but their time, their expertise, their years of self-education. I showed them my contract templates and explained every clause. I demonstrated lighting setups using stuff you could buy at Target. And when we got to the boundaries module, I taught them the magic phrases Dr. Noor had taught me. "That doesn't work for me" became the group's catchphrase. People practiced saying it out loud until it didn't feel like they were being rude. We role-played difficult client scenarios. Someone played a client asking for free work for exposure. And I demonstrated how to redirect that into a paid opportunity or a polite decline without burning bridges or catching fire. People laughed, then they took notes. Then they started actually implementing this stuff. The reviews came in over the following weeks, and my favorite one, the one I screenshot and sent to Dr. No, Kai, Tori, and basically everyone I knew, said, "Mark made me love invoices. I didn't think that was possible." I raised my rates, sent out new proposals with actual numbers attached, and 3 clients said yes immediately. I've been undercharging for years. This workshop paid for itself in 1 week. Another person wrote, "I finally told a client that rush delivery without rush fees doesn't work for me. They paid the rush fee. I didn't spontaneously combust." Miracles are real. I ran that workshop 3 more times over the next 2 months, each one selling out faster than the last. Kai helped me build a simple website for it. Tori, who decided to stay in Philadelphia and figure out her next move, helped me film some of the content so I could eventually turn it into an online course. Sitting in my loft one night, reading through feedback from workshop attendees who were finally charging what they were worth, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Useful. Not decorative, not tolerated. Actually, genuinely useful. Pickles walked across my keyboard, adding his own review in the form of JJ, which I chose to interpret as 5 stars. The Creative Business Summit in Chicago was one of those industry conferences where everyone pretended to be interested in keynote speeches about synergizing visual narratives while actually just networking in hallways and trying to figure out if the coffee was free or if they'd accidentally stolen it. I'd been invited to speak on a panel about building sustainable creative businesses, which was hilarious considering that 6 months ago I'd been getting publicly roasted at a law firm party. But here we were. Life comes at you fast. Apparently, the conference was held at one of those massive hotels where you needed a GPS and possibly a Sherpa to find your meeting room. And every hallway looked identical in that specific way that made you question if you'd somehow walked in a circle for 20 minutes. I just finished my panel, which had gone surprisingly well. People actually laughed at my jokes about pricing psychology, and one person called my advice refreshingly honest, which I was absolutely putting on my website and was heading toward the vendor hall to see if anyone was giving away free pins or those little stress balls shaped like cameras. That's when I heard my name. Not like someone calling out across a crowded room. More like someone saying it with the kind of hesitation that comes with uncertainty, like they weren't sure if they should have said it at all or if they should have just pretended they didn't see me and duck-walked behind a conference banner. Mark. I turned around and my brain did that thing where it tried to process information, but all the gears got stuck halfway through because standing there looking professional and polished and slightly uncomfortable in a way I'd never seen her look before was Bianca, my ex-wife. The woman who'd called me her ex-husband before I'd known we were getting divorced. The woman whose law firm I was currently photographing for their rebrand in what was either the universe's idea of poetic justice or a really elaborate prank show. She looked different. Not physically, same sharp blazer, same confident posture that came from years of arguing in courtrooms, but something around the edges was different. Tired maybe or uncertain emotions I didn't typically associate with Bianca Morales Esquire, partner at Whitmore & Associates, winner of arguments and destroyer of ex-husband's dignity. Yanka, I said because my mouth remembered how to make words even though my brain was still buffering. Hey, she said back, and we stood there in this absolutely ridiculous standoff in the middle of a conference hotel hallway while people streamed past us with tote bags full of promotional materials and regret about the breakfast buffet. I'm here for the legal innovation track, she said, gesturing vaguely toward a conference room that was probably hosting a seminar about blockchain and law or something equally thrilling. I saw your name on the speaker list for the creative business panel. That's great. Congratulations. The conversation was so stiff, it could have been used as a structural support beam. We were talking like two diplomats from countries that had recently been at war and were now attempting peace talks, but nobody had written the treaty yet. Thanks, I said. The panel went well. Turns out people want to know how to charge money for their work without feeling like they're committing a crime. She almost smiled. Almost. That was always one of your strengths. You made things seem approachable. We stood there for another few seconds of excruciating silence, and I was about to make some polite excuse about needing to check my phone or find a bathroom or fake my own death when she said, "Do you want to grab coffee?" Just coffee to talk. Every instinct I had was screaming different things. One part of me wanted to say no, make an excuse. Preserve the clean break I'd made. Another part was curious in that same way you're curious about whether touching a hot stove will actually burn you even though you definitely know it will. And a third part, the part that had been going to therapy and learning about closure and healthy communication. Thought maybe this was one of those moments Dr. Noor talked about where you could choose a different response than the one your trauma wanted you to choose. Sure. I said coffee. We found a cafe in the hotel lobby because of course we did. Hotel cafes are the Switzerland of awkward conversations, and ordered. She got some complicated latte situation. I got tea because I discovered I actually liked tea more than coffee and didn't care if that made me less of a creative professional in some people's eyes. We sat down at a small table near a window that overlooked the Chicago River, which was moving along with absolutely zero concern for the emotional complexity happening inside this hotel. Bianca stirred her latte for what felt like an hour before she spoke. I shouldn't have said what I said at the party. It was cruel. I stirred my tea like it personally owed me money. Watching the bag bob around and trying to figure out how I felt about this apology that I definitely hadn't expected. Yes, it was, I said finally. Not mean, not dismissive, just factual because it had been cruel and I wasn't going to minimize that just to make this conversation easier for either of us. She nodded, looking down at her cup. Mr. Beaumont called me into his office the week after. He'd heard about it. Apparently, several people told him what happened. He said, What kind of leader humiliates family on a microphone? Just like that. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't lecture. Just asked the question and let me sit with it. I took a sip of my tea and waited. This wasn't my moment to fill the silence or make her feel better about feeling bad. I don't have a good excuse, she continued. I could say I was nervous about making partner, or that I felt pressure from my parents to seem successful and independent, or that I'd convinced myself our relationship had been holding me back. But the truth is I was cruel because I wanted to seem impressive to people who don't actually matter, and I used you to do it. That's not okay. It was possibly the most honest thing she'd said to me in the last year of our marriage, maybe longer. Thank you for saying that, I said. And I meant it. Now, we're best friends now. But I'm acknowledging that you just did something difficult. She looked up at me and I saw something in her expression that looked like relief mixed with surprise. You're different, she said. You seem, I don't know, more solid. Is that weird to say? I'm in therapy, I said with a slight smile. And I moved to Philadelphia and started charging what I'm worth and stopped apologizing for taking up space. Turns out that helps. I heard you got the contract for our firm's rebrand, she said. Sloan mentioned it. Your work is really good, Mark. It always was. I should have said that more. Yeah, I agreed. You should have. We talked for another 30 minutes. Not about getting back together. That ship had sailed, sunk, and was currently a habitat for fish, but about logistics. She admitted her parents had been mortified when Mr. Beaumont mentioned the party incident to them at a firm dinner. Apparently, public humiliation of family members was bad for the firm's image. Who knew? She said they'd wanted to reach out to apologize, but she'd told them to give me space, which I appreciated more than she probably realized. She didn't ask for instant forgiveness. Didn't try to minimize what had happened or suggest we just move past it like it was a minor disagreement about where to eat dinner. And I didn't offer some discount version of forgiveness just to make the conversation end more comfortably. What we did instead was something weird and uncomfortable and probably healthy. We acknowledged that things had been bad, that we both contributed to that in different ways, and that we were now different people trying to figure out how to exist in overlapping professional circles without it being a disaster. Before we left, she pulled out her phone. This is my personal number, she said, showing me the screen. Not for favors or weird late-night conversations about what went wrong. Just for peace. If we're going to run into each other at conferences or through work, I'd rather it not be hostile. I added the number to my phone under Bianca. Boundaries only because I'm petty but also practical. Peace works, I said. We walked back toward the conference halls together. The silence less oppressive now, more like two people who'd said what needed to be said and were okay with not saying more. At the escalators, we went different directions. Her toward legal innovation. Me toward a workshop about content marketing that I was absolutely going to skip in favor of exploring Chicago and finding actual good coffee. Take care, Mark, she said. You, too, I replied on the plane back to Philadelphia. I stared out the window at clouds that looked like someone had spilled cotton balls across the sky and tried to figure out what I was feeling. I waited for the anger to show up, the resentment, the urge to text Rafi and rant about how Bianca apologizing didn't undo anything or change what had happened, but it didn't come. Instead, what I felt was something lighter. Not happiness exactly, but not fury either. More like release. Like I'd been carrying around this weight of unfinished business, and someone had finally said, "You can put that down now." And I'd actually listened. I wasn't furious anymore. I was free. The flight attendant came by with the snack cart and I took a packet of pretzels that were so small they barely qualified as food. I opened them and stared at the 6 tiny pretzels that were supposed to sustain a human adult. Still tiny liars, I muttered, eating them anyway. The woman next to me glanced over confused and I just smiled. Some things never change and honestly that was okay too. 2 weeks after the Chicago Coffee Summit, which is what I started calling it in my head because awkward conversation with ex-wife, who publicly humiliated me, didn't have the same professional ring to it. I got an email from Bianca with a subject line that made me stare at my screen like it was written in ancient hieroglyphics. Proposed framework for ongoing communication. Only a lawyer would title an email to their ex-husband like it was a legal brief. I could practically hear her drafting it in her partner office, probably color-coding sections and running it through some kind of professional tone analyzer to make sure it hit the perfect balance between "I'm sorry I was terrible" and "but let's be structured about this reconciliation." The email itself was surprisingly straightforward, which I appreciated because I'd half expected a 12-page document with footnotes and appendices. Mark, I've been thinking about our conversation in Chicago. If we're going to coexist in overlapping professional spaces, and given that you're literally photographing my firm's rebrand, we definitely are, maybe we should establish some ground rules, not legally binding ones, just guidelines for both our sanity. Would you be willing to meet and discuss this? A neutral location, no ambush conversations, just two adults trying to figure out how not to make things worse. Let me know. Bianca, I showed the email to Dr. Ignored during our next session. And she did that thing therapists do where they nod thoughtfully like you've just presented them with a fascinating psychological case study instead of just a weird email from your ex. How do you feel about meeting with her? Dr. No asked, pin poised over her notebook like she was about to take notes on my emotional state for science. Honestly, I'm okay with it, I said, surprising myself with how true that was. 6 months ago, I would have deleted that email and blocked her number and possibly changed my name and fled to Canada. But now, I don't know. It feels like we're both trying to be adults about a situation that started out as a dumpster fire. That's progress, right? That's significant progress, she confirmed. Just remember, you get to set boundaries, too. This isn't just her establishing rules and you following them. It's a mutual agreement between equals. Equals. I like that word. It felt different from how things had been when we were married, when I'd somehow accepted the unspoken hierarchy that put her career and her family's opinions above my work and my needs. Equals meant we both got a say. Equals me. I wasn't just agreeing to keep the peace. I replied to Bianca's email. Neutral cafe works. Thursday at 2 p.m. I'll pick the place since you picked the framework. She responded within an hour. Thursday at 2 works. Send me the address. I chose a cafe in Rittenhouse Square called Elixir Coffee. Nice enough that it felt respectful, casual enough that we weren't doing this over white tablecloths and wine lists, and crucially in Philadelphia, which meant I had home court advantage. Small thing, but it mattered. I wasn't meeting her on her territory anymore. Thursday arrived with that specific kind of November weather that makes you question every clothing choice you've ever made. Too cold for just a jacket, too warm for a full winter coat, definitely too unpredictable to trust that the sun would stay out. I went with layers and hoped for the best. Bianca showed up exactly on time. Of course, she did. Lawyers treat punctuality like a competitive sport, wearing a cashmere sweater and jeans, which was so radically different from her usual power suits that I almost didn't recognize her. She looked like a person instead of a corporate entity, which was disorienting in the way that seeing your teacher at the grocery store as a kid is disorienting. Like, all right, you exist outside of the context where I usually see you. We ordered. She got a cappuccino. I got my usual tea because I'd committed to the tea life and wasn't backing down now, and sat at a table near the back where we could talk without the entire cafe overhearing what was probably going to be a deeply weird conversation. Thanks for meeting me, Bianca said, wrapping her hands around her cup like she needed something to do with them. I know this is strange. Strange is kind of our brand at this point, I said with a slight smile. Might as well lean into it. She almost laughed, which felt like a small victory. Okay, so here's what I was thinking. She started pulling out her phone and opening a notes app because of course she'd prepared for this. We need ground rules, things we agree not to do if we're going to maintain a civil relationship. I wrote some down, but this is collaborative. You can add or veto anything. I appreciated the structure. It felt safer than just winging it and hoping we didn't accidentally detonate our fragile peace with a poorly worded comment. Rule 1, she read off her phone. No jokes with knives, meaning no using humor as a weapon to take shots at each other, especially not in front of other people. That was my mistake at the party and I won't do it again. Agreed. I said humor should make people laugh, not bleed. She typed something on her phone, probably adding my comment verbatim because that's very Bianca, and continued. Rule 2, no bringing up who owed what or who supported whom financially. That's past tense. It's not relevant anymore and it just creates resentment. Your dad's spreadsheet was a work of art though, I said, unable to resist. The color coding alone probably took hours. She closed her eyes and sighed in a way that suggested she'd heard about the spreadsheet and was not thrilled about its existence. I told him that was inappropriate. He didn't listen. He rarely does. Rule 2 is good. I confirmed, let's absolutely never talk about money or who contributed what. Fresh slate. Rule 3, she continued, no slipping our marriage into conversations like an extra charge. Meaning, if we're at the same professional event or conference, we don't bring up our past relationship unless it's directly relevant. We're colleagues who happen to know each other. That's it. I can do that, I said. Although, fair warning, if someone asks how we know each other, I'm going to say it's complicated and change the subject because explaining she's my ex-wife who announced our divorce publicly before telling me and now I photograph her law firm takes too long and makes people uncomfortable. It's complicated works, she agreed, adding it to her notes. We spent the next hour hammering out the details of our truce like we were negotiating a treaty between two small nations who'd finally read the instruction manual. We agreed we'd be cordial exes. Nothing more, nothing less. We'd acknowledge each other at professional events without making it weird. We'd keep conversations light and professional. We wouldn't drag other people into our history or make them pick sides. When her parents came up, because of course they did, I was clear about my boundaries. Your parents want to meet, Bianca said carefully. My mother mentioned it last week. Something about clearing the air and moving forward as a family. I used the phrase Dr. Noor had taught me, and it felt powerful in a way that probably looked calm on the outside but felt like I was setting off fireworks internally. That doesn't work for me. Bianca looked up from her phone and I continued. I'm open to being civil with you because we're going to cross paths professionally and we're both trying to be adults about it, but I'm not interested in being the family piñata again. Your parents made their feelings about me very clear, and I don't need closure or apologies or awkward brunch conversations where everyone pretends the past didn't happen. I'm good. She was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. That's fair. I'll tell them you're not interested in meeting. Thank you, I said and meant it. We established holiday protocols. Keep it light. 2-line texts maximum. Nothing that required an emotional response or invited conversation. When Thanksgiving rolled around a few weeks later, I sent "Hope you have a good Thanksgiving." She replied, "You too, enjoy the day." Simple, clean, not hostile, not intimate, just two people who'd agreed to be decent to each other. For months later, when Bianca was promoted to managing partner, youngest in the firm's history, which was genuinely impressive, even if I'd never say it to her parents, I sent a text. Congrats on managing partner. Keep building. Her response came an hour later. Thank you. That means a lot. It wasn't romance. It wasn't friendship in the way most people would define it. It was something weirder and probably healthier. Respect between two people who had hurt each other acknowledged it and decided to be better going forward. Rafi, when I told him about the whole true situation over beers at a pub near my loft, said, "So, you're like divorced but functional. We're like two businesses that used to merge and then split, but still occasionally have to attend the same conferences and would prefer not to make it everyone else's problem," I explained. That's the most boring answer you could have given, Rafi said, disappointed. I was hoping for more drama. I spent enough time in drama, I said, taking a sip of my beer. This is better. This is sustainable. This is two adults who learned how to use their words. Pickles, who I told about the situation in great detail because he was an excellent listener who never interrupted, seemed to approve based on the way he purred extra loud when I got home that night. Or maybe he was just happy I'd remembered to refill his food bowl on time. Either way, I take it. A year after the party that detonated my old life, I got invited to give the keynote speech at the Northeast Creative Business Summit. Not a panel where I shared time with 5 other people. Not a workshop tucked away in a side room. The keynote, the thing where you stand on an actual stage with lights and a microphone and people who paid money to hear you talk. My first reaction was to assume they'd sent the email to the wrong Mark Rivera and were about to be really embarrassed when some other more accomplished Mark showed up. My second reaction after Dr. Noor talked me down from that particular anxiety spiral was to actually prepare a speech that wouldn't make me or the audience want to fake a fire alarm evacuation. The morning of the keynote, I stood backstage in a venue that held 300 people, all of whom had apparently decided I had something worth listening to. My hands were shaking just enough that I noticed, but not enough that anyone else would. I'd worn my good blazer, the charcoal one that had witnessed my entire Philadelphia transformation, and boots that I'd polished for the first time and possibly ever. The introduction happened. Someone read my bio. Product photographer, workshop facilitator, a voice for sustainable creative business practices, which sounded way more impressive than guy who takes pictures of sandwiches and teaches people how to charge money for their work. I walked onto that stage. The lights were bright enough that I couldn't see individual faces, which helped. The microphone was right there waiting, and I did something I'd gotten really good at over the past year. I just started talking like a human instead of like someone performing professionalism. You don't need permission to be valuable, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. And if someone introduces you as a punchline, become the comedian who owns the room. Not by being louder or meaner, but by deciding that your worth isn't up for debate anymore. By building something so undeniably yours that nobody can take credit for it, but you. I told them about the party, about the toast that flipped the table, about walking out and deciding that was the last time anyone would see me shrink. I told them about sticky notes with rules. About therapy phrases that worked like cheat codes, about learning that boundaries weren't rude, they were infrastructure. People laughed in the right places. Then they got quiet in the important places. And when I finished, when I said, "Left Ballroom," built a life. You can too. They stood up. All of them. 300 people on their feet applauding like I just said something that mattered. In the back of the venue, I could see them. Mr. Beaumont, Sloan, Rafi, Kai, Tori, Juniper, even Theo looking appropriately contemplative. The people who'd seen me without a resume attached. The people who believed I was valuable before I'd convinced myself. After we celebrated with tacos, the size of my self-respect, which was now substantial, and enough laughter to make my face hurt. Back home, I framed a photo from that night. Me, a mic, a room listening. Under it, I wrote, "Left a ballroom, built a life." Pickles knocked the frame over within 5 minutes. And I laughed. Perfect. Nothing in my world was fragile anymore. Not the glass, not the jokes, not me.